The storm had been building for days, its ominous clouds gathering strength over the Atlantic before sweeping inland with a vengeance. What started as a bout of heavy rain quickly transformed into a merciless downpour, flooding towns, uprooting trees, and cutting off entire communities. Weather experts had warned of the storm's intensity, but few expected the devastation it would bring to Kentucky and Virginia. As rivers swelled beyond their banks, roads disappeared beneath murky, rushing waters, and families were forced to flee their homes in the dead of night. In the small town of Ashford, Kentucky, Lisa Caldwell peered out of her kitchen window, her heart pounding as she watched the water rise inch by inch along her driveway. The rain had been relentless for the past 48 hours, and now the creek behind her home had transformed into a raging river. She quickly gathered a few essentials, some clothes, family photos, and important documents, before waking her husband, David. "We have to go," she whispered urgently. "Now!" David, a former firefighter, had seen flooding before, but nothing like this. He turned on the local news, which showed shocking images of homes submerged in water, cars floating like abandoned toys, and rescue crews navigating streets that had become unrecognizable waterways. Officials had just issued a mandatory evacuation order for their neighborhood. "Get the kids," he said, his voice steady but tense. Across state lines in Roanoke, Virginia, police sirens blared through the night as emergency responders went door to door, urging residents to leave before it was too late. The rain pounded against rooftops like a relentless drumbeat, and power flickered in and out, casting neighborhoods into eerie darkness. At the town's main shelter, volunteers scrambled to make room for the growing number of evacuees. Among them was 72-year-old Margaret Hensley, who had lived in the same house for over 5 decades. "I've never seen the river this high," she murmured, clutching her granddaughter's hand. "Not even in '85 when we had that big flood." Meteorologists were already calling the storm one of the most severe weather events in recent history, with some areas receiving over a foot of rain in just 24 hours. Rivers that normally flowed calmly had turned into monstrous torrents, swallowing bridges and highways in their path. The governor of Kentucky declared a state of emergency, mobilizing the National Guard to assist with rescue efforts. Meanwhile, in downtown Richmond, Virginia, business owners scrambled to save what they could. Chris Moreno, who owned a small cafe near the riverfront, spent the night piling sandbags against his doors, hoping they would hold. But by morning, the water had breached the barriers, filling his shop with knee-deep water. "It's heartbreaking," he said, shaking his head. "I put everything into this place, and now, just like that, it's gone." For first responders, the situation was becoming increasingly dire. The floodwaters were not just high, but dangerously fast-moving, making rescues incredibly difficult. In a dramatic scene captured on video, a team of firefighters in Louisville used a rope system to pull a stranded family from the roof of their car as water swirled around them. A mother clutched her toddler tightly as she was lifted to safety, tears streaming down her face. As the storm moved northeast, its wrath showed no signs of slowing. Weather models predicted even more rain in the coming days, raising concerns that the worst was yet to come. Emergency officials urged residents to remain vigilant and avoid travel at all costs. But for many, the damage was already done. Homes were destroyed, livelihoods shattered, and communities left reeling from nature's unforgiving force. Despite the devastation, stories of resilience and heroism emerged. Neighbors helped each other, offering shelter to those who had lost everything. Volunteers formed human chains to guide elderly residents through waist-deep water. And rescue teams, exhausted but determined, continued working around the clock to bring people to safety. For Lisa and David Caldwell, the journey to safety was harrowing. Their car barely made it through the flooded streets before reaching an evacuation center at a nearby high school. As they settled in with their children, the reality of what they had just escaped began to sink in. "We're lucky," Lisa whispered, holding her son close. "We got out in time." But for many others, the road to recovery would be long and uncertain. The storm had left its mark, not just in the form of destruction, but in the memories of those who had lived through its fury. And as the rain finally began to ease, one question remained. How would these communities rebuild in the wake of a storm that had changed everything?